Before I say anything about Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts, I'd like to mention that this video will include heavy spoilers for Season 1, and I would recommend this show, so I urge you to check it out before watching this video. It's only 10 episodes, so it shouldn't take you that long. And also, I know I'm a little late to the party of talking about this show, but in my defense, shut up, I'll do whatever I want. I was immediately drawn into Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts when I first watched the trailer, or rather the first 30 seconds of the trailer, which was how long it took me to decide that I wanted to watch it. The stunning world design, voice acting, and music established an atmosphere that I was more than excited to experience in the show proper, and so I did. And not only was I extremely happy to find that these elements held up, but I was also surprised to come to the realization of everything else the show has to offer. However, as the title of this video alludes to, I think there's a lot of room for improvement in this show, and considering that we're only on Season 1 right now, I can certainly see it reaching that maximum potential in the future. And this is why I want to recognize where this show can improve, because if it irons out these wrinkles, I can definitely see it becoming one of my all-time favorites. So let's take a close look at why Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts is an underdeveloped masterpiece. The first thing that caught my eye about this show was its visuals, most notably its character designs, which are simply fucking phenomenal. It's been a long time since I saw a TV show that has a human character with a non-traditional skin color, so when I saw this super striking purple skin girl, I was just like, oh yeah, cartoons can actually be stylized. And beyond just Kipo herself, all the other characters in the main group also feel wonderfully unique and cohesive all at once. Except Dave, he is a nuclear assault on my eyeballs, he looks like Mega Kross on LSD, and I don't understand how any of his designs got past any stage in production. But every other character not only looks aesthetically pleasing, but immediately gives you an idea of what their personality is like just from the way they look. Let's use Benson as an example. He seems pretty well put together, what with the sweater over a button-up shirt, jeans, and a backpack. This informs us that he pretty much has his shit figured out despite living on a post-apocalyptic mutant-infested Earth. However, he also wears a baseball cap, often wears headphones, and his backpack is a bunch of wacky different colors, which tells us that he is also very relaxed and probably seeks out fun situations whenever he gets the chance. The viewer implicitly gets this impression from the first moment Benson is on screen, then that impression is reinforced in the first scene we get of him, and this can be applied to both Wolf and Kipo as well. But I think these character designs shine most as a unit. Despite everyone having a unique aesthetic, they share common body types and, more importantly, color palettes. Everyone has at least a little pink and/or blue mixed into their design, which really makes them feel like a unified group, and honestly, I just love the pink and blue color combo, and Kipo pulls it off beautifully by keeping the colors pretty desaturated and by grounding these more artificial colors through the addition of browns and blacks to everyone's palette. This allows them to simultaneously stand out from the background environments and also feel like they belong in those background environments. And speaking of backgrounds, if the character designs are the cheese to the pizza, then the backgrounds are the stuffed crust. Weird food metaphors aside, the world of Kipo contains some of the best background art I've seen since Steven Universe. You get so used to seeing these bland digital backgrounds in most animated works, and while they fulfill the role of putting something behind the characters, I find that they rarely are able to tell a story of their own. The world of Kipo has been overrun by mutant animals, and most humans have fled underground for protection, leaving the modern civilization they left behind to be taken over by the elements. This is remarked upon in a few short lines of dialogue, but the backgrounds do the real heavy lifting when it comes to communicating what life has been like on the surface world since whatever catastrophe forced most people underground. Broken down houses, highways, even skyscrapers can be seen, and they are all, well, broken down. Beautiful forests, mountains, and bodies of water are everywhere, and they are integrated into what was left of human society perfectly. And furthermore, they're all empty. Well, until we meet the mute species of the day, but still. Empty of humans. Ever since I played Breath of the Wild, I have been obsessed with this kind of aesthetic. It's melancholy knowing what led to the state the world is in, but it's also serene and calming, and in Kipo's case, fun. The bright colors and wacky characters that inhabit the new world maintain the tone of the series as a lighthearted adventure through a world that we can feel excited to explore. I would have liked it if we had gotten to explore what living on the surface was like through the actual story as well, but the aesthetic of it is certainly enough for me to speculate on. This This show looks so good in so many different aspects, however, it is definitely necessary to recognize the one thing holding this show's visuals back from being truly stupendous, and that is its animation. If the backgrounds are the stuffed crust and the character designs are the cheese, then the animation is the toppings, and honestly, it could be better. The animation is not bad, I want to make that clear right away, but I think that there are definitely some improvements that could be made. The characters are often animated very conservatively. It's not uncommon to see just scaling up and down and repositioning an image in place of actually drawing more frames. And this results in the movements of the characters often feeling very linear. This can result in things like many of the punches and kicks and action scenes not quite feeling like they have the weight that they should. Take this cut from episode 10 where Kipo is fighting these flamingos with her new jaguar arm, for example. So there are three main moves to this cut. First is Kipo's aerial right hook, followed by a kick upwards from the ground and then an uppercut. The first swing looks pretty good since Kipo jumps into it, but then she goes from the follow through of her swing to being on the ground in one frame, which kind of throws off the momentum of her jump. Her kick to the flamingo's head also feels kind of janky because she spends a few frames seemingly winding her kick up, but the thing is that her leg is extending in those few frames, which puts it closer to the flamingo's head. Since her leg is already moving in the direction that she's going to kick, there is less space for the kick itself to cover from frame to frame, which makes it feel less snappy. The uppercut easily feels like it has the most weight behind it because of how far the flamingo flies, but it could have easily been much more impactful if there had once again been some wind-up. Instead, she just kinda goes from sliding down this metal plank directly into the punch. Another important thing to keep in mind is that this is the first fight Kipo has with her new arm, which is disproportionately bigger than the rest of her body. Although the arm itself is very muscular, Kipo is not. We are shown on multiple occasions that whatever part of her body transforms is where the strength boost is mostly localized, and yet she swings a huge club of an arm around, changing its momentum as though it's as light as her normal arm. Each punch would feel a lot more real and weightful if she was putting her whole body into it, but she only uses her arm. Once again, this is by no means bad animation. It's serviceable, but I think it could have been a whole lot better. What really made me acutely aware of the animation in this show was this one clip from episode 1 where Wolf chides Kipo for being too loud, and it looks amazing.
Hey! First lesson of the surface. Up here, you don't shout like that. It's called ringing the dinner bell. Free advice.
This one cut was timed, voiced, and animated perfectly, and it showed me how good these characters could look if they were just given some more frames here and there. I completely understand that animation this smooth throughout the entire show is unrealistic, but I'm not here to complain that we deserve better animation. I'm simply pointing out where I think it can be improved. On the whole, I like Kipo's visuals. I think they bring a huge charm factor to the personality of the show, and they clearly have the potential to be so much more, and I can only hope that the creators recognize this as well. I was considering making audio and visuals a combined segment about the presentation of Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts as a whole, but I found that there are enough distinct observations that can be made about each of them that they warrant their own sections. I'll get the shortest one out of the way first: sound effects. Kipo's sound effects are in a similar boat as its animation. Nothing is straight up bad, but there's obviously a lot of room for improvement. Let's take another look at that wolf clip, or rather another listen.
Hey! First lesson of the surface. Up here, you don't shout like that. It's called ringing the dinner bell. Free advice.
Yet another reason that I love this clip is because it immediately makes me understand what Wolf's spear feels like. A small detail, but I think it's a significant one nonetheless. You ever just swing a stick around? You know that sound that sticks make when you swing them around? Actually, hang on. You can see me, right? So here we have a premium, high quality stick. I had to go outside of my house to get this. Be grateful. Okay. Listen to the sound it makes. You can hear that, right? Hang on. Here we have two premium, high quality sticks. Listen to the sound they make. Shit. Okay, just this one. But you can hear that, right? Now compare that sound to the sound that Wolf's spear makes when she swings it around.
First lesson of the surface, up here. First lesson of the surface, up here.
It sounds like a more metallic version of the stick, and all of this sound comparison is just to demonstrate the weight of Wolf's spear. You don't get that sound without swinging whatever you're holding pretty fast, which tells us that Wolf's spear can't be that heavy considering how fast she's moving it around. And the weight of one of your main character's signature weapon is valuable information to have for understanding fight scenes better. Oh, it's also super satisfying to know that the twig Wolf was picking her teeth with landed in a bush without even seeing it, because we hear it make a rustle in the leaves when she throws it away.
Free advice.
I know these kinds of things are very minute details, but it just goes to show how much this aspect of the presentation can add to the experience, and unfortunately there aren't a lot of moments like this. But moving on to a larger aspect of Kipo's sound design, we have the voice acting, which I find to be pretty incredible among the main group. No one has displayed a full range of emotions vocally yet, but what I've heard so far is very promising. I really appreciate strong delivery of dialogue in normal conversations, and Kipo in the Age of Wonderbeasts delivers wonderfully on this front. A lot of personality is communicated in the way that the characters interact with one another and their environment, and vocals are a big part of this. Remember how I talked about how Benson's personality is conveyed visually through his design? Well, his voice actor, Coy Stewart, communicates all of that beautifully with every sentence that comes out of his mouth. I was immediately on board the Benson train when I saw that opening scene of episode 2, but the little exchange he has with Dave a short while later just sealed the deal.
Tell you what, we'll take you over the ridge in exchange for, I don't know, Dave, what should we do it for?
The Death Stalker tail.
Yeah, the Death Stalker tail.
And this kind of personality is present in every member of the cast. Wolf's frustration towards everyone else is totally sold in her line delivery. I just talked about Benson, and Kipo's scream of surprise when she first encounters Mandu is just fucking gold. Even the abomination that is Dave has a great voice actor who actually makes him bearable to have on screen sometimes. Moving on, the last thing I would like to touch on in terms of audio is the music, which I feel weirdly conflicted about. On the one hand, I really like the songs that are in the show, but it seems strangely prone to playing them at the weirdest possible times when they don't really fit what's going on screen. I first noticed this during the early part of episode 2 where they have this intense chase scene going on and where the main characters are trying to get away from this frog guy who's chasing them down with a car, and they sacrifice Dave and Benson to escape. All the while, this weird, jazzy, upbeat song is playing that sounds like it should be over the ending credits to a sitcom.
Come with me.
I wrote it off at the time because it's supposed to be the song that Benson and Dave were listening to, but this kind of thing happens pretty frequently throughout the show, and it can sometimes spoil the tone of whatever scene it's being played over. The opening theme is god tier, though. Every single time it played, it got me so hyped to watch the rest of the episode, and I fucking love how they spell out Kipo's name in the scenery before cutting to the title card with flawless timing. Oh, I love it! I find that Kipo in the Age of Wonderbeasts is most successful with its music when it isn't trying to get the audience to pay attention to it. The little tunes that play over scenes where the main team is walking into a new location do a great job at establishing the mood of these moments, and I really just want that to be done more for the action scenes, which is where the whole visual audio dissonance thing happens the most. The songs that Kipo sings when she has access to a guitar are all pretty fantastic though. I love her singing voice, and it's one of the reasons I was so into the show from the trailer alone. I've actually been listening to the soundtrack on my own time, and it's all really great. I've been using the word personality a lot, but that's just because this show has so much of it, and the music is no exception. I just wish that this show could find spots in the story that fit these tracks better, and hopefully we'll get to see that happen in later seasons. As you might expect, I am a huge fan of these characters, but as is the running theme of this video, I think there is a lot of room for improvement. Let's begin with our title character, Kipo Oak. We are introduced to Kipo when she first ends up on the surface world, and it is established that she has been separated from her dad. Despite this, Kipo remains extremely optimistic about her situation, and as the episodes go by and she meets more and more people, she continually demonstrates a strong desire to befriend everyone she meets, even when this flies in the face of Wolf's advice. I really like her personality and optimism, especially when it comes to exploring the surface world, and I'm a big fan of her backstory. Learning about her relationship with her dad was very endearing, and the little bits where she she gets all nerdy about astrology are some of my favorite individual moments for her character. On top of this, I love her being part mute. Aside from the development giving her the ability to do super badass parkour stuff, it also generates a super relatable character arc. She worries that since her people have never seen mutes before, they'll start treating her differently once they see her physical changes, and I don't think I need to explain why this development is going to be very applicable to some people. I especially love how her dream about her ideal life shows her facing her fears of people treating her differently and learning to be proud of who she is. I know that all happens in a dream, but my point is that Kipo's ideal life is one where she overcomes the challenges presented to her with help, of course, instead of one where no challenges are present whatsoever. She's got that Mob Psycho 100 mentality, strive for broader shoulders instead of a lighter load. For all the positives I have with Kipo's character, there are a few things that I was less happy about with this first season. I just mentioned how I liked her attitude in contrast to Wolf's, but that really only applies for the first couple episodes. The dynamic of Kipo going, maybe they're friendly, and Wolf lecturing her about how dangerous mutes are gets old pretty fast. I was actually expecting this to become a central conflict considering how it comes up very often in the narrative, and it kinda does in episode 4. Kipo and Wolf have the argument that I had been waiting for since episode 1. Wolf chides Kipo about how she never thinks her plans through and just assumes that everything is going to work out okay, a sentiment that I had of Kipo as well. The issue is that no more than 5 minutes later is the conflict completely dissolved when Kipo acts pessimistic about her people being eaten by a megamute for a moment, and Wolf reassures her that they're probably okay. And there is zero dialogue between them from the moment their argument ends to the resolution of this conflict. After this, they just go back to almost the exact same dynamic, with Kipo being optimistic to a fault and Wolf being the jaded voice of caution. This touches on another issue with the story at large, but I'll get into that later. What this means for Kipo's character is that I simultaneously find her annoying when she bites off more than she can chew, but at the same time I can't help but feeling like she's got some super heavy plot armor. Like seriously, the main group ends up on good terms with most of the mutes they come across. The cats and snakes are both hostile initially, but all it takes is a musical number for each and they both become allies to the main group. I know that the cats didn't technically declare themselves as allies until Kipo got Yum Yum back, but they seemingly had no problem with her playing his guitar once the song got started, so they definitely would have gotten a lot friendlier if the team had stuck around. The rats and raccoons are both friendly from the get-go, and the wolves, while also initially hostile, are more than willing to make friends with the main team until Dave is a huge fucking moron and Kipo pisses them off by freeing the frog guy who the wolves were going to eat. So we have this character who is constantly ignoring the advice given to her by someone who is much more experienced in living on the surface than she is, but who also never suffers any significant consequences for her actions. It's like I simultaneously feel as though Kipo is an idiot for walking up to the mute of the day and just assuming she'll be fine, but I also think that her actions are completely justified due to past experience. There's a strange dissonance between what we're being shown and what we're being told, and it makes me wonder why Wolf acts the way she does all the time. However, we actually do get a bit of an explanation for this in the form of Wolf's flashbacks. Wolf was raised by wolves, and they seemingly instilled a hunting instinct in her. After a year of raising her as one of their own, they used her as some sort of prey for a practice hunt, I guess, and this is what generated her dislike of other people, especially mutes. Now, this is great. From the get-go, I wanted to know more about these characters' pasts, and this is in the ballpark of what I was hoping for, but I just want more. The conclusions that can be drawn about Wolf's upbringing can be easily inferred, but the way it's presented in the show as just a few short flashbacks provided to the audience and only the audience doesn't allow it to be as impactful as it could be. And this actually gets into an issue of this show that affects all of the characters, mostly Kipo and Wolf, and it is that all of the details we get about their past are not shared with the other characters. The audience learns about Wolf's childhood, not the other characters. The audience learns about Kipo's relationship with her dad, not the other characters. At least not to the same extent. This really dilutes Wolf's arc and the general conceit that these characters have formed a close bond because they don't know anything about each other. And this would be so easy to fix too, just have the characters talk to each other about their pasts. Those flashbacks of Kipo and her dad should have been framed as stories that she was telling to the other group members around the fireplace every night before they went to bed. They could have also shared the dreams that they had because of that water mute thing to each other, just have them communicate more. more. In the case of Kipo's past with her dad, this would not only endear the audience more to Kipo, but it would make the friendship between these characters feel a lot more legitimate, which would make Wolf's conflict about not wanting to live in a burrow but also not wanting to part ways with Kipo feel much more powerful. And it's kind of bizarre that this didn't happen, because Kipo is very much the let's talk about our feelings type, and the one time she does manage to do so with Wolf kickstarts the arc about her trying to get Wolf to live down in the burrow with her. Once again, I just want more. The show presents some really great elements but doesn't quite use them to their fullest potential. And it's a shame because I love these characters aesthetically, and I don't just mean that in terms of visuals, although I do love their design. I mean that I love the concept of what these characters are. I love the idea of a person who's lived underground their whole life exploring a world that has been taken over by the elements while she tries to reunite with her family. I love the idea of a kid who is taken in and raised by wolves only to be betrayed by them, which generates a self-sufficient, pessimistic attitude towards the world, and I love the idea of these two personalities being forced to interact with one another and grow from each other. I think that if these ideas had gotten more time in the oven, they would have been absolutely phenomenal, but what we got is just pretty good. An enjoyable experience. This statement is especially true of Benson, who I haven't even mentioned in this section of the video yet because he pretty much doesn't get any real development for the entire duration of season 1. He is a very surface level character, which is especially frustrating because I absolutely love what we have been shown of him so far. I already talked about what I love about his personality and mannerisms, but it's the little things that make me want to explore him so much more, like the fact that he actually listens to music on a regular basis, which is just seemingly the smallest detail in the world, but it makes me love him so much because I also listen to music 24/7. I'm listening to lo-fi hip-hop as I write this video. Seriously, that's barely an exaggeration. If I'm doing something that doesn't require me to not be listening to music, I will be listening to music. Well, that or video essays. I guess this point kinda belongs in the audio section, but I honestly find it completely absurd that it isn't commonplace in every show in existence to show the audience what kind of music your character listens to. Because everyone listens to music all the time, and it's such an easy way to immediately give your audience an idea of what kind of person this character is. But unfortunately for Kipo in the Age of Wonderbeasts, while this does work as a great introduction to Benson, you do have to follow up on that introduction with more in-depth characterization, which season 1 doesn't quite get around to. Specifically, I'd like to learn about Benson's backstory in at least as much detail as we got from Wolf, preferably more. And I'd also like to see him overcome a challenge that relates to those past experiences, so basically just a good character arc. I mean, we might end up getting something out of the crush he forms on that one burrow guy, but the season ends on Kipo declaring that the group is going to go after Scarlemagne to save her dad, so I'm not quite sure how they might work in Benson's love life, and wow, I really haven't talked about it yet. Benson's gay. And I think it's handled pretty well. I love that the show is being so upfront about it, and I love that it by no means consumes Benson's character. And beyond this, it's just nice to see a gay black guy in a cartoon for kids, because that's how you normalize the existence of minorities. You just make them exist and make the audience aware that they exist. Benson being gay was actually the only spoiler I knew about this show going in, thanks comment section, and I was worried that it would somehow color my perception of him, but when that didn't happen at all, I had a bit of an epiphany. I think I'm in a bit of a weird position when it comes to discussing minority representation in media, because I see a lot of people talking about how it's super important that we get minority representation and throw their hats in the air for every character who is part of a minority regardless of context. But like, seeing a minority represented in a TV show doesn't even faze me. There's a great video called How to Black by a channel called Toonrific Tarek that breaks down the presence of black characters in cartoons and the culture surrounding how people think about black characters in cartoons, and at the end of the video he says this.
You know what happens when you question why Diane is Vietnamese, or why Connie is West Indian, or why Craig is black? That means that you feel like being white is the default.
And you can just switch out all the different races in that clips with sexual orientations or genders or literally anything, and the meaning will stay the same. And I just don't see a default. I've been exposed to so much media that features people of all types of minorities, and I have been friends with people of all types of minorities that it has just been completely normalized to me, which is part of the point of representing minorities in media. It's just that to me, it doesn't even feel like something worth commenting on, which I guess is the end goal of minority representation, so Good job, media. You'll never hear me say this character shouldn't be black or they only made this character gay to pander to queer audience members, but I'm also not going to act like it's a super big deal that a gay black character exists in this show and like it's somehow affecting my experience with it. Especially when Benson being gay is just a cherry on top of the cake that is this show. You could make him straight and change virtually nothing about the story. Like I said, it's all just normal to me. I have multiple friends who turned out to be queer, I'm gender fluid myself, and let's be honest, probably somewhere on the autism spectrum. I mean, I've been Benson when he tells Kipo that he only likes her as a friend multiple times. One time because the person approaching me was not of the gender that I am attracted to, and one time just because I didn't feel the same way towards them. This shit happens. This shit is normal. People of minorities and people of majorities experience this shit. If you love Benson because he's gay and black, awesome. I'm super happy for you, but in conclusion to this section of the video that I have spent way too much time on, Benson is gay, and I think that's pretty cool. Moving on. Kipo's story, and by that I mean its plot, is surprise surprise full of potential that it isn't quite living up to. Though what's present is still good and I'm not saying it's bad. It makes sense to start with the first thing that most viewers understood about this show, and that is its premise, which I absolutely love. I'm a huge fan of the idea of a modified world. Just the concept of taking Earth and putting some weird spin on it or the people who live on it and seeing how that changes the environment and the way people live their lives is very fascinating to me. Kipo in the Age of Wonderbeasts is a perfect example of this, and I've already discussed why. The way the elements have taken over human architecture and how the mutes have integrated the remnants of human society into their own is super cool aesthetically. Okay, so like I'm editing the Kipo, like I'm getting footage for the Kipo video, and I'm like, I look over and I'm like, oh hey, this is a cool shot, and then I see like the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, ever since I was like a 10-year-old child and I was playing Minecraft, I was like, how cool would it be if I could like traverse my house if my house was just water, right? And I see this and I'm like, oh shit, that's really, really cool. And then I see this happen. Anyone who doesn't think that this is the coolest shit in the world, that this is like the best way to design a building, I don't care that I might drown. I want my building to be like this. This is the coolest fucking thing in the world. I fucking love this. I can't believe I didn't mention it in the script. That's why I'm putting this in right now. This is the coolest fucking thing. And then Kipo says exactly what I'm thinking.
Way better than taking the stairs.
It is way better than taking the stairs. Fucking look at all this. Look at all this. This is,
If you run it,
look at how fucking cool this all is. It's so cool. I can't take the coolness factor of all. Look at this. It's so cool. Look at this. Look at how cool this is. Who cares that you're in mortal danger? Who gives a fuck? It's so cool. I just wish that we could have got to explore the inner workings of how people live their lives on the surface, but it seems to be basically camping 24/7. I'm not that disappointed in this element because I was never deluding myself into thinking that this show wouldn't be focusing on its characters and their journey over everything else, as much as I would have loved to hear its explanation for gigantic 8-legged corgis. Speaking of, let's talk a little about that journey. I've already discussed the characters, but not so much what happens to them and the overall plot. Unfortunately, this is one of the weaker elements of the show in my opinion, because while it doesn't have any more issues than the other parts of the story, it's kinda hard to have anything special and unique about stuff like pacing, formula, and plot structure, so it really just comes down to how good is it. And the answer is okay, pretty much across the board. One example of this, which I alluded to in a previous section, is the minor episode-to-episode conflicts, the stuff like Wolf and Kipo's argument from episode 4. You'll recall that I criticized it for being too short, and this is unfortunately pretty common of these types of interpersonal conflicts. In that same episode, we got Benson and Dave debating whether they should leave the group or not, ultimately deciding to stay. It honestly just feels like they couldn't think of anything to do with them for this episode, and it's another of the many instances of them having mixed characterization. Like how they steal the Deathstalker tail but then immediately give it back once confronted and offer to take the main two through Skyscraper Valley on the house. There's also the time where Wolf hides the note from Kipo's dad from Kipo, and also when Wolf runs away from the group after finding out that Kipo is part mute. These moments should all feel hard-hitting, hitting, but I actually had a bit of trouble remembering them when going back to write this script, and that's because of two reasons. One, not very much time is dedicated to them, which I already mentioned, and two, the characters' decisions that lead to and resolve these conflicts often feel kinda arbitrary. Let's go back to the example when Benson and Dave were thinking about leaving the group. Their reasoning for doing so is actually really solid, they just don't want to die. But when they change their minds and decide to stay, Benson's reasoning is that for the first time ever, they were doing something more than just living. Aside from sounding like vague anime-esque dialogue, the issue here is that we know virtually nothing about their life before they met Kipo and Wolf, so this statement has no legs to stand on. In fact, the first scene we get of Benson is him just casually climbing up a cell tower or something to collect soda for Dave. And he seems pretty comfortable with his lifestyle considering his upbeat attitude and total dismission of the lethal danger he was put in. It seems like episode 4 was supposed to establish why Benson and Dave want to stick around Kipo, since that was completely ignored in the first 3 episodes, which felt really strange, but it just doesn't provide a very satisfying answer. The same thing also applies to Wolf. It's very unclear why she decides to stick around Kipo, especially when she seems so annoyed by her in every scene for the first several episodes.
Wolf, you came back!
Yep.
It's implied that Wolf was actually having a lot of fun on these adventures and that she had grown attached to Kipo when she hides the note from her, but once again, up until now, the audience really wouldn't have any evidence to support this. Show don't tell. It kinda gets into the thing I was talking about with wanting the characters to talk about their pasts to each other more. This won't really be an issue moving forward. By this point, the characters have been through enough together that their bond feels genuine, so this isn't exactly a problem that will need to be fixed so much as an issue that I felt was worth mentioning because I have noticed it in my viewing of the show. One other thing I felt was worth bringing up but couldn't really fit into this section was the pacing, specifically the first half of the show. To me, the show doesn't really get rolling until episode 6, Ratland, and everything before that feels really formulaic and just like it's setting up elements that are going to be incorporated later but aren't that interesting until they are reincorporated. This makes the first few episodes feel a little slower than I would like, but once we do get to episode 6, the show really hits its stride. For the sake of leaving off on a positive note, I would like to mention that I really loved the sort of scavenger hunt framing for the story where Kipo has to decipher all these clues that her dad left behind to help her find him. They not only flesh out Kipo's character, but give us some insight into her relationship with her dad, and it's just fun to see the characters crack these codes and make big advancements in their journey. Right now, I feel like Kipo in the Age of Wonderbeasts is around a 6 out of 10, but despite that, I call this show an underdeveloped masterpiece because it has all the elements to be so much more than a series that's just worthwhile. A lot of the issues I had with season 1 were that I just wanted more of something, more animation, more details about these characters' past, more Dave being off screen. And that's what really excites me. We are only on season 1 of this show, and I can already see this turning out to be one of the best cartoons since Gravity Falls. As of now, we don't know when season 2 will drop, but I am eager to see what else Kipo in the Age of Wonderbeasts has in store for us, because if they tighten up just a few screws, if they iron out just a few wrinkles, add just a few more pizza toppings, this show could be something worth getting very excited about. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll stick around for more content like this. I make tons of video essays mostly about cartoons, sometimes anime, sometimes whatever I feel like. So if that sounds like something you would enjoy, remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified of when I upload in the future. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.